From a shark attack in a city river to outdoor diners under siege by giant, rampaging rats, here are 10 giant animals found in the middle of the city and the havoc they cause. Number 10. Snake in the park. A woman recently fought to save the life of her dog after her pet was brutally attacked by a giant python in the middle of a city park. This horrifying incident happened in Hong Kong when a massive python came out of nowhere while a woman was walking her dog Dexter through Sai Kung West Country Park. As you can imagine, snakes don't belong anywhere inside of a city park. They don't belong in city parks, they don't belong in city gardens, and they definitely don't belong in city skate parks. And yet, the way this woman took care of the snake is going to absolutely shock you. Her dog Dexter ran slightly ahead of her and then began barking frantically and making horrifying noises. At first, she thought her pet had run into some kind of wild boar, which are fairly common in Hong Kong. But when she got farther down the path, she saw that her dog was being squeezed to death by a huge python. It had coiled itself around the dog's neck and head and was trying to suffocate it to death. In order to save the life of her dog, the woman began hammering on the snake with her fists. She really did come to the dog's rescue, but her fists weren't deterring the snake at all. It looked like the dog was losing its life already as Dexter began to slowly stop fighting back. Panicked, Lynx took out a pocket knife and began stabbing the snake mercilessly in its head. That ended up doing the trick, and the snake lost its grip and then began to slither away, leaving the dog confused but still alive. As for what happened to the snake, it probably slithered into the bushes and bled to death from the woman's attack. Number 9. Bull gone loose. At a festival in the northeast of Spain, a bull recently jumped into an audience and went on an insane rampage, attacking spectators left, right and centre. One person ended up being sent to the hospital in critical condition, while another 17 were hurt during the wild attack. The huge bull jumped out of the arena as a group of men were trying to show off their skills by dodging the bull's attacks as it charged at them. As it turned out, the bull didn't really care for being used as a piece of entertainment. It charged to the gates, jumped over the wall, and stampeded into the benches where the public was sitting, watching what you could say is arguably one of the most inhumane things that still happens with animals today, torturing bulls in Spain for entertainment. Well, this time the bull got its revenge. After charging through the stands, the bull actually found its way into the parking lot and caused even more havoc. It then tried to escape into the forest, but unfortunately, authorities were quick to put the bull down with a bullet. The injured spectators were taken to the nearest hospital and treated for their injuries, and there were no deaths reported. Maybe now people will think twice before going down to watch people torment a bull for sport. Have you ever gone to watch a bull fight? Or are you against bullfighting yourself? Tell me what you think in the comments below. Then, remember to subscribe to Epic Wildlife if you haven't already for even more awesome new videos. Number 8. Shark in the city. An extremely rare shark attack just happened in Australia. And while this isn't really that strange for shark attacks to happen off the coast of Australia, it is a little unusual when a shark attacks a person in the middle of a city. This attack happened in Perth, when a man swimming in the local Swan River was bit on his upper leg during the first ever shark attack in that area since 1969. Of course, this shark was not very long. It was only about 10 feet, and it was a bull shark. These types of sharks are not typically as horrifying to deal with as great whites, but they are still big and can do some serious damage. According to Kieran Hayter, a local kayaker who came to the man's aid after he was bitten, the water was filled with blood. The shark really took a big bite out of the guy as he swam at Perth's Blackwall Reach Reserve, which is far too close into the city for any shark to be roaming. He was taken to the Royal Perth Hospital in a very grave condition, but was later reported to be making a very good recovery. As for the Swan River itself, this river flows into the ocean through one of Perth's southern ports. Almost nobody would expect a shark to actually swim up the river and start attacking swimmers. The last reported shark fatality that happened in the Swan River was in 1923 when another man was bitten on his legs, but he didn't make it. Mind you, that was nearly 100 years ago. Number 7. Brown bear attack in Russia. It should come as no surprise that there was recently a brown bear attack in the middle of a Russian city. This particular incident was caught on a surveillance video when a young man was walking down the street minding his own business and a bear appeared from behind a tree and came charging towards him. Thinking quickly, the guy stood completely still, thinking that the bear would just pass him by. But it didn't. The bear jumped on him and bit him. In fact, the only thing that saved this guy's life was a nearby taxi driver who laid on his horn and began switching his lights on and off to try and scare the bear, which did in fact work. The bear ran away, and the driver was nice enough to take the injured man to hospital. But what's really crazy about this is that the 26-year-old was attacked in the middle of the city of Yaroslavl, about 250 miles from Moscow. The bear must have snuck in from the woods nearby because it was hungry and then decided that the man would make a nice snack. Unfortunately, local wildlife experts decided that the bear was a threat to human society and it was tracked and killed by rangers. It ended up being a pretty young bear, only around 3 years old and weighing just shy of 200 pounds. Number 6. Death by cassowary. Imagine how embarrassing it would be to be killed by a giant bird in the middle of your own backyard. If you ask me, it would be extremely embarrassing. And yet, that's exactly what happens to a man named Marvin Hajos when a cassowary killed him in his backyard in his home of Gainesville, Florida. This guy lived 75 years, seeing multiple wars and dramatic changes in every aspect of the world, only to be killed by basically a giant chicken. What's even stranger is that the cassowary was actually his pet. These giant birds are not the best animals to keep around the house, especially in the city, seeing as they grow to be taller than an average human with giant claws on their feet that can easily scoop out your guts. According to the report from CNN, Marvin made the initial call to 911 at about 10 o'clock in the morning. Marvin apparently fell down. The cassowary saw his weakness and it trampled him to death with its claws. Marvin was taken to the local hospital but died from his injuries. Cassowaries are birds native to Australia and New Guinea, and they don't really have any business being in some old man's backyard in Florida. You really have to wonder what people are thinking. Even the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission considers cassowaries to be Class 2 wildlife, which means they pose a serious threat to humans and must be kept in specific cages. These are not the best pets for retirement. Number 5. Hotel Lioness. A lioness was recently captured on surveillance footage when she tried to get a reservation at a local hotel in the Indian city of Junagadh. This happened early Wednesday morning when the lioness strolled into the very centre of town, began sniffing around the hotel parking, then thought about going inside and trying to get a room. This is not something that happens in most places. Lions typically don't wander into the heart of cities and start poking around in parking lots and buildings. The only lucky thing about this incident was that the lioness arrived at the hotel at around 5 o'clock in the morning, meaning there was nobody else there to witness her curious exploring. The big cat came in, she walked around, and then she headed off. According to a statement from the owner of the hotel, big cats actually do frequent this property. Even though it's in the heart of the city, Junagadh is a city that prides itself on being extremely close to a wild area where lions still roam free. The Gir Sanctuary is just a short way off, and sometimes the lions either get bored or confused and decide to take a trip to the big city. The lioness probably got lost and ended up needing to take a break at the hotel. Number 4. Cougar Fights Dog. Next up is a cougar that attacks a small dog in the Canadian province of British Columbia. As you might already know, in North America we have our own big cats to deal with. Cougars may not be as big and as mean as African lions, but they certainly terrorize our cities. The cougar apparently wandered into the local neighborhood of Coquitlam, went straight into a man's yard, grabbed his pet dog in its powerful jaws, and then ran off with an easy dinner. Lucky for the dog, its owner was able to chase away and scare the cougar, forcing it to drop the dog from its jaws and take off. According to the report from North Shore News, the dog did quickly receive veterinary treatment for the bite wounds inflicted by the cougar, and the dog was expected to make a full recovery. This isn't a rare incident either. Cougars travel all the way along creeks and rivers, directly into the heart of our cities, where they prey on small cats, dogs, and even children if they get a chance. Number 3. Kicked by a moose. This next story is a reminder not to touch wildlife, especially when they show up uninvited to a city near you. There's no better example of what not to do than the woman who was recently caught trying to pet a wild moose in Colorado. The entire incident was captured on camera. The woman walked up to the random moose. It clearly didn't like her at all, and it kicked out its legs in defense. What's totally crazy is that this happened even as the nearby people were screaming at the woman to tell her to get away from the wild animal, calling her an idiot and telling her to keep her distance. Of course, she completely ignored the reasonable advice from the people nearby and paid the price when the noose lashed out and tried to kick her in the face. Lucky for the woman, she didn't sustain any serious injury. However, she was definitely embarrassed. After the moose tried to kick her, she put her head down, didn't look at anyone, and swiftly walked away humiliated. Let this be a lesson to everyone. If a giant moose randomly walks into your neighbourhood in the middle of the day, maybe stay in your car and don't try to touch it. Number 2. Rat attacks. This story of rampaging rodents in the city is so horrifying that it has to be included among tales of giant animals. Rats in New York City are apparently attacking outside diners after being starved to death during the COVID-19 pandemic. Everyone in New York knows that there is no animal more terrifying than a city rat. And because the coronavirus pandemic forced the rats into a state of starvation and desperation, one which they had not suffered previously, they have now turned to attacking people brazenly who are dining outside at restaurants, trying to get their piece of the pie. Forget staying in the sewers. Rats in New York City are now so bold that they will climb out of the gutters, onto your shoe, and even up your pants leg if it means they can get a piece of your artisanal chicken sandwich. Before you know it, they'll even be trying to drink your coffee. Number 1. A lynx in the suburbs. In the northern Canadian city of Whitehorse, a lynx recently invaded a neighbourhood and attacked somebody's dog. This was a Canadian lynx, one of the most gorgeous cats on the planet. The lynx is far more ferocious than most people's dogs, though significantly smaller than a cougar. A spokesperson for the Department of the Environment said in a recent report that the lynx population in the Yukon is in a precarious state because they don't have enough food out in the wild. This is causing animals like the lynx and polar bears to move deeper and deeper into the cities, where their only option is feasting on your pet. The dog in this most recent attack is believed to have made a full recovery, though it is also believed that the same lynx attacked a different dog in a different neighbourhood just a week before, making it a serial dog attacker. But really, you can't blame the cat for just trying to have a meal. After all, a lynx attacking your dog is like your house cat attacking a rat. What's the biggest animal you've ever seen in the city? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and stop by again for another amazing video. What's the scariest animal that you have ever encountered in the wild? Do you know if the animal saw you as well, or did you feel threatened?